I didn't trip. Okay. So I formally studied equity in my graduate work, and each time I'd enter into one of these spaces, I felt like they expected us to introduce ourselves by how we were most marginalized. I'd introduce myself, and I would say I was Jewish, and although I've experienced discrimination as a function of that identity, ironically in one of these equity courses, for me, being Jewish was about community and belonging. What drew me to equity work was something different. It was something visceral and embodied. I knew what it was, but I was afraid to speak it. Then a few years ago, I was part of a team that was writing an anti-oppression course for our board. And there they were again, the dreaded introductions. I don't know what came over me that day, but I decided to speak my truth. Hi, my name's Debbie. I knew they expected me all to say that I was a Jew, but I didn't. I said it. I outed myself, and I said to everyone in the room, I come to this work because I've always felt marginalized for being fat. They laughed at me. My face went red. And it was at that point that I made the commitment for people to see and understand the experiences of fat shaming, body shaming, and discrimination experienced by fat people every day. When I was 9 years old, it was the International Year of the Child. I went to a day camp, and to celebrate the year, each of the cabins had to dress up as people from different countries, and my cabin got Spain. Half the girls had to dress up as boys, and I desperately did not want to be one. I wanted to be one of those pretty little girls that got to wear flowers in their hair and scarves around their waist like flamenco dancers. But I was bigger in height and width than all the other children, and invariably, despite my begging, they made me be a man. My counselor taped a piece of black crepe paper to my face. I hated it. I hated that I was big. I hated that I had to be a man, and the tears started flowing. And as the tears flowed, they hit the crepe paper. So now, not only did I have a big black mustache, I had a big black Frank Zappa handlebar mustache that went down my lips, onto my chin, and down my neck, and it was permanently on my face for the rest of the day. I know, right? So then, in 6th grade, we went on an exchange to Quebec. This is another good one. So the plan was that we were going to be billeted with families, and we had to fill out these profiles to explain our likes and dislikes. It was like a dating service. And the teachers then had to make a decision about who would be our partners. So the day came when everybody got their profiles, except for me. The teacher pulls me aside, and she says, "Now, Debbie, we were going to place you with one girl, but then we realized she probably wasn't placed with the right person because that girl's not known for being kind. So we thought, since you were both overweight, you would be better suited to one another, so you will be now partners." Okay. So in 8th grade, we did the 12-minute run. Now, I know you probably find this surprising, but I was not the best runner. In fact, I was literally the worst runner. The teacher would call out to everyone in class and say, "The run's over, Debbie just arrived." I know, right? So I don't actually remember my classmates making fun of me, but I remember the teacher. I remember as we would do our neighborhood runs, how she would drive through the neighborhood in her car and scream at us from her window saying, "Hurry up and go faster." And I'd wonder if she recognized the hypocrisy of this while she was sitting in her air-conditioned car while my legs were chafing and my lungs were on fire. Thank you. Anyway, so back to the run. This time was going to be different. I asked a girlfriend of mine, who was a great runner, if she would help me. And every day after school, we practiced. For 3 weeks. The day of the run, I was ready. I did not expect miracles, but I did expect better performance. One of my girlfriends, Beth Matenko, who is right there, had to count my laps. So as I ran around in circles, she would scream words of encouragement at me, like, "Keep going, and you're doing great." And when the run was over, I was red-faced and tired, but proud. We had to line up and give our teacher the numbers. And so I stood in line, and I was excited, so excited to tell her. And I told her my numbers, and in front of everyone, she said, "There's no way you did that many laps. Do it again on the second round." So I'm bent over, you know those running cramps that you get? And I'm red-faced. I'm like, "I can't do it again. I'm exhausted." And she said, "Then do it again at 4 o'clock. I told her that I wasn't lying. Beth told her that the count was accurate, but she was still convinced that we were both lying. And when I look back, I wonder, how did it serve her to say that we were lying? So me, the well-behaved, you can always count on me student, changed forever in that moment. And I looked up at the teacher, and in front of everyone in class, I told her to F off. Thank you. Except I actually said the word, but I'm not allowed to say it on the stage because there's students in the room. Anyway, you can guess what happened next. She yelled at me. She sent me to the office. I made my way to the change room, trying to take off my sweaty gym clothes, but they were sticking to me. And I gave up, and I just sat down in a pool of my own tears. But it was more than tears. It was shame, it was humiliation, it was frustration, it was complete and utter resignation that no effort I ever made was going to make a difference. Sometime later, the principal walked into the change room. She told me to wash up and take my time and then come have a chat with her in the office. She was an incredibly kind woman, and when I think back, I think that part of her empathy stemmed from the fact that she had survived polio as a young girl and understood what it was like to live with physical challenges. So this is actually her. This is actually funny. This is her autograph to me at the end of grade 8 after I said that word to the teacher. "Debbie, congratulations on your great year. Have a wonderful summer." So I made my way to the office. And there she was, sitting at her desk with my student record in front of her. Up until then, I had no idea that these things existed. Now, as a principal, I know what those heavily used student records look like. They are thick with documentation, hundreds of pages bursting out of it, corners are curled. Mine was flat, thin, and untattered. She said to me, "By the look of your student record, it does not appear that you have been in the office very often." Of course, I had been, but I'd been helping the secretaries and delivering newsletters. She asked me what happened. I told her I swore at the teacher, and the angry tears started again. She said, "I lied. I didn't lie. I tried so hard. I told her I was going to drop phys ed. She said I actually couldn't because you needed it to graduate high school." She told me then that Hattie's going to like this one. She told me then that it was actually really good for mental health and well-being and had a profound impact on academic success. This is like early 80s. She was well ahead of her time. She then told me that I shouldn't have sworn at the teacher, but she understood my anger. She called my mom. "Hello, Mrs. Donsky. I have Debbie in the office. Yeah, she's fine. She's had a bit of a rough day. Wondering if you might want to come pick her up, maybe take her out shopping to cheer her up." I should have known I wasn't in trouble at that point. My mom was at the school within minutes. We got in the car and started to drive home, and the tears started again. She wanted to go back into the school. My mother is always the protector, and I begged her not to. I did not want to set foot back in that space. The shame was palpable. When I returned to the school in 9th grade, that teacher was gone. I took phys ed in grade 9, but dropped it as soon as I could, and I gained more than 50 pounds by the time high school was over. As I remind my mother of this story, now a tiny woman who probably doesn't weigh 100 pounds, she's brought back to her own trauma as a chubby little girl. And she tells me this story, which I've heard at least 100 times, about the time that her teacher told her to read the Walrus's portion of The Walrus and the Carpenter poem by Lewis Carroll because she was fat as a walrus, while her classmates laughed along with the teacher. The fact that my mother is petite now is irrelevant. We do not unsee ourselves as fat when we are told that is who and what we are. I remember the first time my daughter Rachel thought that there was something wrong with her body. I'd taken her swimming with a bunch of kids from the neighborhood, and she had this big news to share. Of course, she didn't tell me about it. Had I known, I would have done anything to try to dissuade her from sharing this story to avoid the impending shame. So we get to the pool, and she announces to all her friends, "Guess what? I weigh 80 pounds, and I don't have to sit in a booster, and I can even sit in the front seat of the car." I didn't know what she said because I was 40 feet away, but she said something. A few of the girls giggled, and then one girl spoke, and then I saw it. The look of shame, humiliation, broken-hearted, shoulders slumped, head down. I asked her afterwards what happened, and she told me what she said, and that the older girl said, "I weigh 30 pounds less than you." This was the first time Rach experienced insecurity as a result of somebody's opinion about her weight. Up until then, she saw it as a thing of pride. She was growing, she was big, she was strong. You know, it's ironic that while we're told as fat people that we take up far too much space, we are also not seen, we are looked past, and we are not considered. Lindy West, an unapologetic fat woman, social rights activist, and writer, tells us that being fat is seen as a constant state of failure, and that we all silently agree that one day this fat person won't be fat, so it's better not to speak about it because it's shameful and impolite to do so. Her response to this was to come out as a fat person and claim that identity. You know, each time people would say to me, "What's your talk about?" I'd say fat, and I'd wait for that sort of shocked look, and they'd cock their head and they'd have nothing to say. Or, you know, the people who love me would say, "Oh, Debbie, you have to stop saying that." But the thing is, I can't stop saying it. It's who I am, and it's how I see myself, and it's the part of me that I have to negotiate in all settings. Thank you. Lately, I've taken to drawing images of fat women in unlikely spaces. The sensual woman, the woman comfortable in her nakedness, the yogi, and my personal favorite, the ballerina. As my pencil embraces each line, each fold, each roll, it does so in the most loving way, and I can see these women in their beauty, their strength, and if you can imagine, their grace. You know, Brené Brown tells us that empathy is the antidote to shame. I thought losing weight was the antidote. I thought that if I lost weight, everything I wanted would come true. I would become the person I was meant to be. But the thing is, these experiences have made me the person I'm meant to be. An advocate, empathetic, an educator who believes in each person's possibility and not their limits, someone who is going to fight for not only my own acceptance, but for an equitable school system that is the foundation of an equitable society. You know, there are so many moments of insidious traumas or microaggressions where we come to internalize the things that people say about us. We are lazy, we are gluttonous, we are sloppy, we are fat, we are stupid. We internalize these comments as children. Do you remember a time when you just were? Before somebody's comments were stuck in your head, telling you that you weren't enough? Like Rachel before the car seat, my mom before the walrus and the carpenter, or me before a teacher told me that being fat erased any other aspect of who or what I was? We need to disrupt those spaces, those voices, those limits, and know that not only do we have a right to be here, but we have a right to be here out loud and in your face without apology. And as we reclaim those spaces, we make the commitment to not make assumptions about somebody's likes, dislikes, abilities, or personality because of the body that holds them, but to see them as whole people with aspirations and impossible dreams for which they no longer need to ask permission to pursue. Thank you.